Yes, we're back again. Kristi and Katie, your crime time friends. Stories, justice, laughs collide. True Crime Squad, come join the ride. Grab the clues, let's take a stand. For victims' voices, hand in hand. True Crime Squad, it's time to shine. Season 6, your turn, your time. True Crime Squad, where justice meets hilarity.
Hey everybody, welcome to the True Crime Squad. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm just over here chuckling about what a badass Miss Trina K is.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the very same thing. So we talked to you yesterday about Lori Vallow's latest bid to get a new trial. And Prosecutor K has responded with the mic drop of the century, which is, all right, bitch, let's see the medical records.
Let's unseal that shit.
Yeah.
And Trina,
now
I'm
she's
with
got
you.
a reason to.
Let's do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see what kind of bullshit, because if she genuinely had a stomach virus, that is the longest stomach virus I've ever heard of in my life.
Right. Yeah.
24 to 48 hours, man. We all know it. We've all had it.
And that started on Friday. Then she comes into court Monday and can't function. Tuesday, can't function. Being dragged into court by a judge who refuses to come see her in her cell.
Right. And she's shot herself in the foot here, as usual, mostly in the ass, basically. But because she doesn't understand the law, that the prosecutor couldn't look at those medical records because she didn't have a reason to. But now she does.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
So let's go, fool. Let's
go. Let's do it. Let's do it. We all want to see it.
Desperately.
Well, we have a day of pretty wild stuff. I have to say, it's kind of a wild crime day, but you know it's going to be a wild crime day when Katie kicks us off with some WTF news.
You know, for the longest time we have wondered, why would women want to marry inmates? Why do women write to men that are in prison? Why did women want to see shirtless pictures of Alex Murdaugh? Or why were there women on the internet claiming that they were the long-lost soulmate of Brian Koberger? And so on and so on and so forth, right? Why would they?
Yes.
Well, this lady kind of helps to take the cake, really.
Does she?
Well, she too wanted to marry an inmate. They fell in love while she was working as a prison nurse.
Oh, no. Not another one of these.
But you know what the problem was? She had a pesky husband.
Oh, as they often do.
And what do when we have a husband we don't want anymore?
We sure don't just get a damn divorce, do we?
Indeed, no. We poison them.
Oh, God.
So this dumb bitch right here is from Missouri. Her name is Amy Murray. And Amy went ahead and poisoned her husband straight to death because she was having an affair with an inmate whom she wanted to marry.
Oh, my God, Amy. You are the dumbest idiot on the planet. Dumbest.
Not only did she poison her husband, Joshua Murray, with ethylene glycol, or antifreeze.
Oh, God.
She also burned her house to the ground to try to cover up her crime.
And all of that for some dumbass who's in prison?
Yeah.
My God, woman, you need, I don't even know, major intervention.
Yeah. Now, who is the prize here? Some dude named Eugene Claypool. Eugene. I can tell right now. Yes. He was convicted of second-degree murder in 2001 and is serving a life sentence. So he's been in prison for quite a while.
And serving a life sentence. So you're going to blow up your whole life for somebody who's serving a life sentence?
Well, apparently Amy didn't know prison life super well because she had lots of long phone conversations with him that were, what do you think? Oh, Amy.
Recorded.
They were recorded How did you get through nursing school? How?
Yeah.
So
Good
she told
God.
him in a phone call that she was in a very unhappy marriage and she really wanted to get divorced. Well, on December 11th, 2018, she told the police that she and her 11-year-old son and the 2 family dogs, they cleaned out the house except for Dad, went to McDonald's. And when they got home, the house was on fire. She said she tried to go in, but she couldn't because the house was filled with smoke. And later, poor Josh's body was found on the bed in the master bedroom.
Oh my God.
Then she told Eugene Claypool on the phone that her husband was now out of the picture and they could marry.
Oh my God.
She also offered to pay for an attorney for old Eugene so that he could try to appeal to have that life sentence reduced and maybe they could get him released.
Oh yeah, seems like it. Yeah, seems real likely.
Mm-hmm.
Lady, your meds need meds.
Well, you will not like this, but she has pled guilty. Kind of. She took an Alford plea.
Okay.
On 1 count of second-degree murder. She initially had 4 counts. She had first-degree murder, armed criminal action, second-degree arson, and tampering with physical evidence. And first-degree sexual abuse and 3 counts of offender abuse, right? Because
Right.
she was having a relationship with an inmate,
With
which,
an inmate.
Amy, that's illegal and stupid.
Hello. Yeah.
Amy has been sentenced to, you will not believe this, 12 years in prison.
Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Why?
Why indeed?
Why would they give her such a light sentence?
It's hard to know. Yeah.
Wow.
Right, it really is first-degree murder. Good Lord. Right? Her poor
yeah.
son. Yeah.
That is so sad. My
Yeah.
God. And his poor family have got to be like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
Right? I mean, I would say just get a divorce, Amy. But the problem with that is, you don't date the inmates, for God's sake.
You just don't. No, you don't date the inmates ever. And when you do, you should go to prison forever because it is a very unsafe situation for inmates.
Yep.
For other human beings. And of course, your poor husband and children.
Yep.
My God.
But a genius, she
ladies.
is not.
No.
Amy, I'm going to tell you something. I think this is the problem. You were getting your murder advice from somebody who was in prison because he got caught for murder. Kind of see how that works? You were
blind leading the blind right there. That's what that is.
For sure playing with the wrong team completely. Yeah.
Holy shit. That is unbelievable. And 12 years?
Yeah.
Oh, ladies, please.
So
Sandy
Amy,
and Gigi are in here together.
Yeah. Oh boy. I hope prison super sucks. I hope it just super sucks.
I would think you would know that, Amy, having worked in prison.
You'd
My
think.
God.
Yep. She
the hell?
got a little too attached.
That's one way of putting it. Yay, gods.
Insane. Yep. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you for our main case.
Yes. So last night on Case Updates, I talked a little bit about the syringe attacks that happened in France over the last weekend.
Yeah.
At a big countrywide music festival where it's just this thing that they do every year where people are encouraged to go out and play music in the street. And so then people are out listening to music in the street. And approximately 145, primarily women. There were a few men, probably accidentally, because this appears to be a crime that is targeted at women, were poked with syringes, guys. They call it getting stung. This horrified me. Some women went to the hospital. Some people had symptoms, felt dizzy and nauseous. Some didn't. The question was, what the hell is happening and how did this get organized across the whole country? Let me tell you something. That's because this is not new. This is something that's been happening in several European countries for several years now. And actually, if you know what piquerism is, well, let me tell you a little bit about it. Piquerism is a sexual interest in penetrating the skin of another person with sharp objects like pins, razors, knives. So, like Jack the
Gross.
Ripper. Jack the Ripper is like a very iconic example of piquerism. They think that he got sexual gratification from all the stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
But forms of
Whew.
piquerism that involve pins, hat pins at one time, all different kinds of pins, syringes, things like that, have been happening for a couple hundred years at least to women. But this
Wow.
syringe phenomenon has been going on for a while now at like big outdoor like public events, like somewhere where you're not going through any kind of a metal detector or anything that would pick up what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you about, so this most recent one, June 2025 in France, 145 plus cases. These were syringe attacks during a street music festival. 12 suspects have been arrested. In Ireland, in nightclubs in Dublin, this was in late 2021. We don't know how many cases. Multiple investigations into needle spiking incidents. Now, one theory, and there are a bunch of theories, and the problem with this is that this is not like an organized group that's doing this.
Right.
This is more like an incel movement.
Yeah.
There were calls to sting women at this music festival in France on social media. Well, right. What were they injecting? Good question.
Right.
There's toxicology. We're awaiting toxicology. No one knows for sure. The question, they were thinking maybe GHB or Rohypnol. There have certainly been incidences in which nothing was injected, where it was just being used to create fear and panic in women. There historically have been cases where there was an attempt to infect someone with HIV. So the problem is, this is not like, oh, this is a ring of men doing this. No, it's not. It's more a movement or a phenomenon.
God
So
almighty.
depending where you are, what's on or in the syringes can
Could be
vary
different.
because it's not all the same people doing
Oh my
it.
God.
Yeah. So in Belgium in 2022, there was a festival called the We Are Young Festival and also a football match. There were 38 victims, 14 fans at a match, 24 teens at a festival reported needle pricks. Germany,
no.
a Berghain nightclub, and in Berlin, this was May 2022, at least one, possibly more, an Australian musician reported a syringe attack. Spain, events in Catalonia and Basque country in summer of 2022, 30 plus victims. Numerous reports across regions. This is a big part of the problem, is that it's happening. This is very broad.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very difficult to investigate because it's just happening in these large crushes of people.
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland, in a street parade in Zurich in August of 2022, 8 victims. And in Australia, a nightclub in Melbourne in 2022, there was one woman
Mm-hmm.
who was pricked and felt unwell after and had to go to the hospital, likely a date rape type drug.
Mm-hmm.
This is insane, and it is terrifying.
Completely insane. Yeah.
Yes, Kristi, it has happened in Australia too. I believe it's also happened here in the U.S., but it's been particularly common in European countries.
Yeah.
Right, Gran. Neurotoxins, carcinogenic substances, biological diseases. Right. It's an endless possibility of things. Poisons.
Yeah. Well, but also those numbers really only reflect people who actually told the police, and some probably did
That's
not.
only who reported.
But also people who didn't know what happened. Maybe they thought they did get stung by a bee.
Right.
Or were in a crush of people and something poked them, but they weren't sure what it was. Or
you wouldn't, jump right to someone poked me with a syringe, would you?
I wouldn't, no.
Except maybe
unless
now
I saw
you will.
it. Right, yeah.
Basically, officials in all of these countries are saying, if you think this happened to you, go straight to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Report it, let them test you, make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you haven't had some kind of exposure that you don't know about. And some of them have turned out to be actual bug bites, or they got scratched, or, various things. But tons of them, there are, in fact, just a needle mark. Arms.
This seems like the beginning of some crazy
backside,
Dan Brown book.
And thighs is where it generally happens, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
more I read into this, I'm like, holy shit. So right now, of course, France is trying to investigate in all of these different little towns, all of these different events. There is a really famous social media influencer in France, and I'm not going to tell you her name because I know I'm going to say it wrong, but she was one of the people who, as she called it, got stung at one of these music festivals, and she reported it, and then she talked about it on her social media and said, if no one's talking about this or reporting this, then there won't ever be anything done about it. So
Right.
if this happened to you, if you have some weird puncture mark and you don't know why after going to one of these events, go to the hospital and report it and let them test you and figure it out. Because,
Definitely.
I think you make a really good point that those numbers are just who reported.
Right.
And if you didn't know what you were reporting, I mean, like, I have 4 bug bites on my thigh today. I have no idea where they came from. No clue. They are, in fact, bug bites for sure. But, like, I don't remember it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a diabetic, I'm very used to needles. And I will tell you that when I inject insulin to myself, I don't always feel it. Like, depending on where it goes in your body, you may feel it and you may not feel it.
Yeah.
But it is terrifying. And I wanted to share the history of this with you guys, that it goes back a long ways.
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper is known as a very famous peakeress and might be really where a lot of that definition came from.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Soviet serial killer in the 70s and 80s. His name is Rostov Ripper. He was the Rostov Ripper. His name is actually Andrei Chikatilo. And when he murdered his first victim, who was a 9-year-old girl, he was able to achieve erection and orgasm just by stabbing and slashing the bodies of women and children to death.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But then let me tell you about an American named Frank Raniere.
Okay.
And there are a lot of Frank Ranieres, and so I don't have a picture of him because I don't want to get the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
But Frank Raniere, who was a former NYPD recruit, was arrested for paying underage girls to let him poke them in the butt with pins because he got aroused from that.
Mm-hmm.
He was 25 at the time. He said he liked to see the pins go through the muscle and flesh. He paid 3 girls, none of them older than 15, to allow him to pierce their buttocks with pins and assault them with Bic pens.
Oh my God.
The girls were given $500 for each session. One girl was paid a total of $6,000 for repeatedly submitting to the alleged abuse. She told the police she needed the cash.
Oh.
Jesus. He was a member of the police academy in July of 2020.
Of course he was.
July of 2004. He was only in the academy for 2 months. He was pushed out for reasons. Probably he was poking people with pins. I don't know.
For reasons.
Gross.
Reasons. Yeah. Good ones, obviously. Yeah.
So he approached his first victim, who then recruited 2 of her underage friends. It sounds a little like the Epstein stuff.
Yeah. Yuck.
Basically, she said, if you want to make some cash, he'll pay you a lot. It's not so bad. Yeah, it is. So he was arrested after a friend of one of the girls, one of them told a friend what they were doing, and they called the police because they're like, holy shit.
Always
not
leave it
cool.
to a good friend, Yeah.
Yeah. Like, at least someone was like, okay, this shouldn't be happening.
Right. This seems like abuse.
Yeah. So he was investigated. Of course, he actually, I believe, pled guilty to this crime. but holy shit, terrifying.
Wow.
So there are people out there, men out there, who get off on poking women with pins or syringes or needles. And now, oh my God, Gran, I did not know that. The Menendez brothers said their dad put pins in their buttocks.
Well,
Holy
not surprising,
shit.
but Jesus Christ.
Well, I know that there were some cases back in kind of Victorian era. Well, and a lot of times at times when women wore hats, like that was the thing that you always wore a hat. There were hat pins, and some of them could be really long because the pins were really big. And there were a lot of problems with piquerism in public because there were men carrying around those hat pins. Also, women knew how to use those hat pins as self-defense.
Yeah.
Which, good. Whoa, they had x-rays with pins still in there? Oh my God.
Oh. Right,
Right?
Valerie?
Bethany says, choose the bear.
Yeah. Valerie said, how does this even enter someone's mind? Good question.
I don't know, man. But it's very scary. And one of the articles I read is that it appears that in some cases it's just done to frighten people, scare women. Like, hey, we can
make
just
sure
walk
women
up to
know
you
they're
and
not safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Just poke you with a pin or a syringe or whatever,
Joke's on you,
Absolutely no
bastards.
respect.
We know women aren't safe. We already know.
Yeah, we've always known.
That's horrific.
But I wanted to share this because holy shit, scary. Also, we should all be aware of this reality and let young women in our lives know of this reality, because it is on the rise, particularly in Europe, that this is becoming more and more common. One of the reasons they think it might be is because women are getting savvier to protecting their drinks, so you can't roofie a woman in their drink so easily now. So instead, they just jab them with a syringe that has the roofie in it.
Oh my gosh.
Right, Kristi? It sounds like a power control thing. It certainly does.
Definitely.
It certainly does. Yeah.
Definitely. And honestly.
And just a menacing.
Yeah. Yes.
Menacing. I could do this to you anytime.
With all the dumbass incel behavior we've had in the U.S. here these last, 8 years or so?
Right.
I could see that coming here in a wave. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Please don't.
Hell yeah. Please don't. But everyone, please be careful. And if you think this has happened to you, you go get checked. And you probably need to get checked for a period of time to make sure that you haven't been exposed to something.
Though I'd like to hope that if you put a needle in most of the girls I know, they'd turn around and put it in your eye. But this is happening so fast that I'm guessing
it happens
not.
very fast. And when you're in like a big group of people, like at a concert or something, and you may not even realize it's happened to you. Yeah. Somebody just bumped into you,
Right.
Because unless it's a big needle or they jam it in really far, it is very possible to poke you with a needle and you not really feel it. Or just feel a bump from somebody. That's what one gal that in France said, is that she felt like someone bumped into her. And then she started to feel dizzy and nauseated, and took a look at her arm, and she had an injection site.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, as usual, fuck everyone that's doing this shit.
Yeah.
But be aware, here's one more thing we all have to be concerned about for safety.
Boo.
And if we get more information on the cases in France, I will let you know. I know they have now arrested 14 people.
Good.
I'm hoping that's probably from like surveillance cameras and stuff like that, identifying people that are doing this kind of stuff. I'm hoping we're going to see more of it. But what are they going to charge them with? Is it going to be much of anything?
Right.
Is it just an assault? Like,
is it a battery? Is it a sex crime because they actually penetrated the body? Like,
right,
what?
Because piquerism is a sex crime.
Yeah.
So I wonder that. Also, there will be some toxicology results coming back eventually as well.
Yeah.
Right. It would depend on the gauge of the needle. If it's
if
it's a small needle.
Right.
Because the other thing that people can do is they can dose you with insulin and can kill you.
Right.
Very much for real. And like the little insulin pen needles like I use. You
Yeah.
don't even feel them. They're
Right.
very small. They're tiny gauge, and they don't go in very far.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Right,
Rosanna?
Rosanna? Yeah, could be
Could
as
it
serious as attempted murder, depending on
yeah,
what's in the syringe.
for sure.
I know. So we will keep updating this. But after learning about this yesterday, I fell down a very dark rabbit hole.
Wow, I am blown
Oy.
away. I had no idea.
Well, I didn't either, but now we know. And with that, Katie, I know you're going to wrap us up with some serial killer news.
I am. Some new news has surfaced in the murders of Peewee Gaskins. So I thought this was a good time to
Ooh,
talk about Peewee Gaskins. Kristi, I know, mentioned earlier, Kristi in the chat, that this is he just keeps on giving, just like Lori Vallow, right? He left the planet in 1991, but we're still hearing about this fool. There's some stuff about
really?
him that you guys are going to find very interesting. This is Peewee Gaskins. Peewee was an active serial killer in South Carolina
Okay.
back in the 70s. And before that, as a kid, he was in all kinds of trouble. First of all, when he was 1 year old, he drank a bottle of kerosene that
Oh
caused him
my
to have
God.
seizures until he was 3.
Holy hell.
Now, Pee-wee was a little dude, and it depends on who you talk to, because his kind of friend and former prosecutor, Little Dicky Harpootlian, says that he was 5'1".
What?
We'll get there. Uh, Others are saying he was 5'5". Some are saying he was 5'4". Let's just say he was a little dude,
Okay.
littler
Well,
than
I mean,
others. Thus the
Pee-wee,
name
usually.
Pee-wee. Pee-wee also had an unnaturally high-pitched voice, or could when
Ooh,
he was speaking to people and being creepy, apparently.
ew.
Yeah. So Pee-wee was a super racist. You need to know that.
Ew.
Uh, Not too surprising considering that he had to go to reform school for a while after he assaulted a girl with an axe because she caught him breaking into her family's home.
Oh my
He
God.
was sentenced to 5 years in, get this, the South Carolina Industrial School for White Boys.
Oh my God.
In the 60s. Apparently, because he was small, he was overpowered and frequently raped by his fellow inmates.
Oh boy.
He's off to a very rough start. He
Yeah.
escaped from the school, got married, and then returned to the school to complete his sentence. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the 40s, actually. So he was released in 1951 at the age of 18.
So even at that age, he had female fans who wanted to marry him while he was in
Apparently. Yeah.
reform school. Yikes.
He worked for a while on a tobacco plantation till he was arrested in 1953 for attacking a teenage girl with a hammer over an alleged insult.
Oh my God.
He went to prison for 6 years for that. He was known as the most feared man in the prison. Or, no, he killed the most feared man in the prison, a man named Hazel Brazel.
Oh my gosh.
It was ruled as self-defense. However, he did get 3 years in prison for 3 additional years for involuntary manslaughter.
Wow.
He escaped in 1955 by hiding in the back of a garbage truck. He went to Florida and took a
Whoa.
job as a carny.
As you do.
That's who you want traveling around from community to community. He was
Yikes.
rearrested and remanded to custody at some point and then paroled in 1961.
Yikes.
So from there, he went on committing burglaries and fencing stolen property mostly. 2 years after parole, he was arrested for the rape of a 12-year-old girl, but absconded while waiting sentencing. This guy got way too many chances.
He sure did.
Then he was arrested in Georgia and sentenced to 8 years of imprisonment. He was paroled again in 1968. This is when he decides to move to South Carolina. Start fresh.
Oh, poor South Carolina.
Yep. In 1969, he murdered a female hitchhiker and sunk her body into a swamp.
Jeez.
He actually has memoirs, and in his memoirs he said, "All I could think about is how I could do anything I wanted to her."
God.
And that's where the killing skills pretty much started. He killed a lot of people that were driving around the coastal highways. He called them his coastal kills.
God.
He was killing on average every 6 weeks. When he would start feeling
Whoa.
bothersomeness, in his words, bothersomeness, that meant he needed to go kill again. He tortured, he mutilated, he tried to keep his victims alive as long as possible before they died.
Jesus.
He confessed to stabbing, suffocation, mutilation, and cannibalism of some of his victims. He's actually assaulted many of them as well. He confessed right before he was executed to 80 to 90 victims, but
Oh my God.
they only are definitely attributing 13 kills to him.
Holy shit.
14 with Hazel Brazel. So in 1970, he murdered 15-year-old Janice Kirby and 17-year-old Patricia Ann Alsbrook. I believe one of them was his niece. Yeah, Janice was his niece. He beat them to death because he said they were doing drugs. I mean,
whoa.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
he's a real
Psychopath.
vigilante now. Yeah.
Sure.
In 1971 or 72, he killed Martha Ann Dix. She's the reason we're talking about him today. I'll get to it. At 20, he said he had to kill her because there was a rumor that he may be the father of her unborn child, and because she was an alleged drug dealer who had supplied his other two victims with drugs. So she had to die.
Oh my God.
Her remains were found in a ditch and then disappeared. They were sent to a university to study and were never seen again.
Wow.
Until now. I'll get there. Then he raped and drowned Doreen Hope Dempsey. She was 22. And her 2-year-old daughter, Robin Michelle Dempsey.
Oh my God.
Why? Because Doreen's man was black. And Robin, the baby, Robin that was 2, was biracial, and he felt like that was absolutely not something that you should do. Also, Doreen was pregnant, and he knew she was bringing a second biracial child into the world, and he wasn't going to have it.
Oh my God.
In 74, he shot his friend and criminal associate, Johnny Sellers, in the back of his head, and then stabbed his ex-girlfriend, Jessie Ruth Judy, to death. Sellers asked for money because they stole a boat together, and Gaskins fenced it and then never gave him his cut. So he needed that, and being the businessman he was. And so Pee-wee decided to just kill him instead.
Wow.
He murdered Jessie because he thought that she would tell the police about his criminal activities. In 1975, he murdered Silas Barnwell Yates. He was 45. He slit his throat in a murder-for-hire scheme. However, Gaskins in court really disputed that. He said it was done by karate chop. Okay, Jackie Chan, calm down here. I'm guessing it really was a knife. Yeah.
I don't think you did that with just your hand, you dumbass.
Yep. So Yates, the victim was in a dispute with his ex-girlfriend, a woman named Suzanne Kipper Owens. And so she and her husband, John Owens, just paid Gaskins $1,500 just to murder Yates, just to get rid of him, with the karate chop, apparently.
God.
Also in 75, Diane Bellamy Neely, 25, she was separated from her husband. Her husband was one of Gaskins' closest friends and criminal conspirator, and he was afraid that Diane just knew too much, so he killed her. Also killed her boyfriend, Avery Leroy Howard. He had to kill Howard because he had asked for money to pay for attorneys and legal expenses surrounding his own charges for fraud and auto theft.
Oh
so again, Gaskins was afraid that Avery might roll on him too, so he had to kill him as well. Kim Gelkin, who was 13, he stabbed her to death to keep her from telling police that he had moved her from North Charleston without her permission. in other words, kidnapped her,
Yeah.
and to keep her from telling police she was being sexually abused by several adult men, including Gaskins. So he was trafficking this girl.
Jesus.
Dennis Bellamy, also in 75. He had a real spree in 75. Also in 75, Dennis Bellamy, 27, and John Henry Knight, 15. Diane Bellamy was their sister. He shot both of them in the back of the head on October 10th, 1975. He had promised to pay Dennis Bellamy for some stolen guns. And Bellamy, silly man, thought he would get that money from Gaskins. So he went to his trailer in Prospect, South Carolina, responded by offering to return the guns to the woods from behind his home. And he took Bellamy into the woods, claiming he was going to retrieve the guns, and instead shot him and his brother in the head immediately.
Jesus.
So, how did he get arrested? Well,
Yeah.
when he killed Bellamy and Johnny Knight, he was not prepared to dispose of their bodies. He needed some help. So he called up his good friend, Walter Neely, he'd done a solid and murdered his ex-wife, and said, hey man, come help me with these bodies. So he did. Well, that was a mistake for poor old Pee Wee here, because what happened is that Neely ended up in trouble too for something else, and he went, hey, you want to get a real bad guy? Let me tell you all about him, and rolled on.
Wow.
And that's how this fool was finally taken down.
My God.
But he wasn't
Got
done
away
yet.
with so much for so long.
He did. He got put in prison. He was on death row. He was convicted for that double murder. He was on death row for a short time. And then the South Carolina Supreme Court actually overturned that. So then he was had a long string of life sentences. Well, there was somebody else in prison, a kid named Rudolph Tyner. Tyner was 23. He also was on death row in the same prison for a March 1978 double murder. Well, Gaskins didn't like Tyner. And, being the good vigilante he was, he felt like he needed to do something about this guy. And luckily, the victims that he murdered, their last name was Moon. Their son was a guy named Tommy Simo. And Tommy, he knew Gaskins was in the same prison and that he was a crazy son of a bitch. So he visited him in the prison and said, I want you to kill this Tyner dude. He killed my parents. And he said, bet, let's do it. So he started visiting him and slipping materials into him, including dynamite and a cap and some other things. He was getting things into the prison into the heel of his shoe.
Holy hell.
So eventually, he had everything he needed to do the deed. So he rigged up what kind of looked like a radio. And he gave it to Tyner in his cell. He told him this would make it so they could talk to each other from cell to cell, kind of like a walkie-talkie.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyner holds it up to his head in his cell, and Pee Wee just pushes the button and blows his head off. In the prison.
Oh my God. In the prison?
Yep.
Holy shit.
Yep.
That was a very elaborate way to kill someone in a prison.
Right. So now it's time to try him for the very last murder, the prison one. And there's a brand new solicitor in town, the prosecutor. And he's a fresh-faced prosecutor named Dick Harpootlian.
Oh my God.
So Dick Harpootlian is writing a book. He's written a book that is actually released later this year, all about his interactions with Pee Wee. And he says that during his interactions with him, they got onto a first name basis, and he spoke to him actually quite a bit. Whilst waiting for his execution, he was able to get a death penalty judgment against him, but he would call Dick's home He would call his office. He
Ew.
sent him Christmas cards.
Oh,
He told him one time, "You know, Dick, you're just like me." And he said, "Just like you?" He said, "Yeah, I like killing. You like killing." And Dick said, I don't like killing." He was like, "Yeah, you do. You're trying to kill me."
oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Because of that, he did not attend the execution in 1991 because he felt like those words were kind of hanging over his head.
Wow.
However, it seemed like Pee Wee kind of considered them to be friends. But let me tell you what kind of a friend Pee Wee is. Pee Wee tried to convince his son to kidnap Harpootlian's 4-year-old daughter
Oh my God.
in some weird attempt to put together a scheme and able to escape the prison. It didn't work.
Whoa.
Right before his execution, he slit his own wrists and tried to kill himself. He was not successful. He
Trying to beat the executioner to the game, huh? It's weird.
he started insisting that he'd committed between 100 and 110 murders, including a little girl named Margaret Peg Coutinho. She was the 13-year-old daughter of a South Carolina state senator named James Coutinho.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
there's a lot of evidence that refutes most of the things he's claimed that he did, but they don't know for sure. They think most of that was just for notoriety. But uh, his last words were, "I'll let my lawyers talk for me. I'm ready to go." And he was executed on September 6, 1991 at 1:10 a.m.
Wow.
So why are we talking about him now? Well, it's
Yeah.
because of those lost bones. So those lost bones have been in a box that have been passed around from a few different scientists, and they didn't know what they were. And then they have finally been able to put the pieces together, and now they know exactly who the bones belong to. And they belong to the girl that he murdered, who he claimed was the serial killer. Or not the serial killer, the drug dealer. We don't know what was true. Her
Yeah.
name was Martha Ann Dix. She was 19 years old.
Oh my God.
He murdered her in the summer of 1971, and her
Wow.
remains have finally been returned to Sumter County.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is wild.
after all this time. Those bones have been missing since 1977, so for 48 years they've been missing.
My God.
Yeah,
That's awful.
yeah.
I'm glad this dude's no longer on the planet. That is hideous.
I wasn't familiar with him, so
Me
this was
neither.
an interesting deep dive into this crazy bastard. Wow. I mean, did the kerosene just addle his brains?
Right? Did it cause some damage?
What else was his childhood like? Like, I have lots of questions about him. But, if you're interested more, later this year, there is going to be a book come out from Dick Harpootlian all about his experiences with him. He also has some tape
Interesting.
of him recounting some of his murders.
Wow.
Hmm.
How interesting that he would be
Yeah.
kind of obsessed with the prosecutor.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. He called him Dick. They got on a first name basis. Yeah.
Wow. You.
Hmm.
That's just creepy as hell.
Yeah. That's a
What
wild
a
one.
scary dude, though. It's crazy that he got away with so much before they finally
Mhm.
got him put away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
this was back in the 60s and 70s. The interstate stuff. This
Yeah.
is back when we really, a lot of those serial killers were getting away with a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was DNA, Christy. I thought so too, but according to the articles that I've read, this was based on other identification and on
Hmm.
researching her case and understanding the age of the bones and where they came from, and that's how they've determined that they know they're hers.
Wow. How
Yeah.
interesting.
Actually, they're saying that they've had a hell of a time finding any relatives.
Yeah, I bet. That was a long time ago.
I mean, yeah, practically everybody that was involved with his case are dead.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you have it.
Well, we've landed you with a lot to think about today.
Yes.
Whew.
Wow.
Well, this is it for us for this week. So please go take good care of yourselves, get a break from crime, go have some fun, laugh, be outside, whatever you want to do.
sure.
But always get some perspective. Yeah, South Carolina is not okay. Yeah, that's pretty much everywhere is not okay at the moment, it seems like. We'll be back on Monday with our regularly scheduled time at 6 p.m. Mountain, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to tell you by then.
You know there will. Crimers just keep criming.
They do, and you know it. We are the True Crime Squad. Thanks for being here.
Take care.
Season 6, we're back again. Kristi and Katie, your crime time friends. Stories, justice, laughs collide. True Crime Squad, come join the ride. Grab the clues, let's take a stand. For victims' voices, hand in hand. True Crime Squad, it's time to shine. Season 6, your turn, your time. True Crime Squad, where justice meets hilarity.